Today we're taking a look at the patch notes for Heimdallr, the Vigilant. And in the context of this patch notes, I was wondering while watching the live show, which will probably be going up shortly after this, depending on what uploads first, what time we can expect the next season as well, which was kind of hinted at by Hyris because I said this is going to be the last patch of the season. So I looked into the stats in-game, and both the Battle Pass and the Ranked season run out in 63 days, so we can roughly expect the next season to start around very, very late January, or right at the start of February. And that would mean that they will announce the next patch probably around mid-January or a bit earlier, right after the Christmas holidays and everything, and they will then probably have PTS up for a while. So that's why we're getting a lot of skins in this patch, which we're not going to talk about too much here. That's for the live viewing where you can actually see them live, and we're going to focus on Heimdallr and the balance changes. And the first thing here is, of course, Heimdallr himself, the new Norse hunter. Yes, he's a hunter, and we begin right with the kit, right with the passive. So his passive already has multiple aspects to it. And in order to explain that, we have to look at the basic attack chain first. So his basic attacks have a 1.3, 1.3, 1.5 swing time and damage. Both of the 1.3 hits also have an AoE cleave effect. So those hit for some extra damage, 33% on targets around the initial target that's hit, which of course greatly helps him with clearing. The 1.3 swing time and the 1.5 swing time and damage mean that he has the same DPS as any other hunter in that regard, but his attacks are slower. And with these slower attacks comes more damage at the same time per hit. So they have a scaling of 130%, 150%. And that means that he's going to feel very different, especially if you build a lot of attack speed. He still feels slower than other hunters. And his base attack speed scaling is also relatively low, so he will overall feel slow but heavy hitting. And that brings us to the passive as well. So when Heimdallr gets vision of an enemy, he gains physical power up to a maximum of 5 guards. It doesn't show the stack. Oh no, it does show the stack here. I thought it was actually a flat 3, but it's actually 3% per stack, which is very interesting. So you can get up to 15% extra power if you have vision of the full enemy team. And of course, the more power you have, the more this will scale up. When an enemy guard would disappear from vision, including stealth, Heimdallr continues to see them for 4 seconds. They're still revealed to him. Heimdallr's critical strikes only deal 70% bonus damage. So they said this is to offset the massive hits that you could get with bonus effects from items like Deathbringer on the 3rd hit of his basic attack chain. And I'm going to do some calculations for that, of course, to see how impactful that will be, but they said on the patch notes it should roughly even out in terms of damage, in terms of DPS, so we'll see about that. And then we move on to his first ability, Piercing Sight. What Heimdallr does is he throws his sword into the air, and it stays there for up to 10 seconds, and it reveals enemies in a range of 120 units. And it's just in the sky and the enemies can see it. And then he can refire the ability to shoot it down at the ground, and then it crashes down after a brief time and deals damage. Damage here is 70 to 310. And it says plus 105% of your physical power here. But on the patch note, they specifically said that the ability has a relatively low scaling, so this might be a mistake. Maybe this means 15. Maybe this means something completely different. Maybe they just said it wrong on the patch notes, or maybe it was changed, but 105 would not be low scaling, so I'm not quite sure what is going on here. But anyways, he can travel very far. We will get to that in a bit. And this sword will basically, the attack will follow wherever he goes. So even if he goes back to base and throws it on the ground there, and reveal enemies while traveling through an area, so you can kind of get quick vision of some things. Has a mana cost of 50-70 and a 14-second cooldown. The Gjallarhorn is his second ability, where he blows that horn for 2 seconds, and it's similar to Barkos Burp, I would say, in how it looks. And what this does is it deals damage to enemies in front of him in a really, really wide cone, and they have decreased movement and attack speed. And it seems like this is our scaling. It says every 0.5 seconds. I'm not sure if it scales up or if it's like a consistent value. And while blowing this horn, he's immune to knockups and gains bonus protections. So let's look at that part. First, we have damage per tick, 8 to 40 plus 35% scaling with a 2-second duration and 0.5 seconds. That's quite a significant amount. That's 140% scaling from blowing the horn. But at the same time, he can't use basic attacks during that, so it kind of makes sense. And the protection that you get is 16 to 40, which is... I don't know what Apollo's current numbers are, but I think it's less than Apollo gets from his 2. And the slow is 15 to 25% with a duration of 1.2 seconds. I actually wonder if this ability could also be used for clearing. That would be interesting, but it has relatively low base and relatively high scaling, so it looks like it's more towards late game. And then when Heimdall ends the cast, either through canceling it himself after 2 seconds, or after 2 seconds, so you can cancel it early to use it immediately, he raises the yellow horn for a final blast. The blast damages enemies and knocks them away from Heimdall. And this knockback does 50 to 210 damage plus 60% scaling. It doesn't have the biggest knockback effect. It's a bit of a knockback, it's not crazy far, but I think it will be impactful enough if you use it instantly, sometimes just to knock an enemy back, just to get your basic attacks off and get them away from you. That can be quite strong, I think. The cost is 60 to 80 and the cooldown is 14 seconds. Very interesting ability. And then we have the Bifrost, the Bifrost. It's called Bifrost in game. I'm going to stick to Bifrost now because Heimdall actually says Bifrost when he uses it. So there's no point in even trying to get the other way through. And this one is... I'm going to read this one because it's actually really complicated, while not being complicated at the same time. Heimdall manifests a fragment of the Bifrost at its location. When 2 fragments are placed, they become linked, allowing Heimdall to traverse the Bifrost. The greater the distance between the fragments, the longer it takes to begin traversing, and the longer it takes for it to be usable again. If Heimdall places a 3rd fragment down, the oldest fragment vanishes. Enemies that walk between 2 fragments are revealed to Heimdall. So, I think that doesn't sufficiently explain it, honestly. So, these fragments are like portals. You put a fragment on the ground, and then you put another fragment somewhere else, and they're linked, and you can portal between them. And then they close up depending on the range you've traveled. So the cooldown, it starts like the shortest distance would be 0.5 seconds, but if you travel from base to lane, then it's like 200 something seconds. So basically ultimate, or like a teleport time, longer than ultimate. So it completely depends on what distance you travel with this, because the distance here also is 85 to 700 feet. And then you have a warm-up scale on this of 0.5 to 3.5 seconds, depending on the distance you travel as well. So the closer you are, I think the quicker you can travel. So it's riskier to travel further away because it takes longer. So if you put it relatively close to you, you're relatively safe in comparison. But you still have to place the 2 crystals first. It's definitely unique in how it works. And it also reveals enemies between the connection points of this ability. So you could basically put it across the map as a tripwire as well, from one side to the other, and reveal everyone that goes across your half of the territory. There's a lot of ways to utilize this in interesting approaches, and we'll see what works out. And what's interesting is also like the only thing that leveling seems to do here is decrease the cooldown. It doesn't increase the cost either. It's just always 40, relatively cheap. And the cooldown goes down from a maximum of 210 to a maximum of 90 seconds. So I think it scales down in every regard, even on the shortest distances, eventually. But the cooldown stays relatively long, I would say, if you're not building any cooldown reduction items. So that is something worth keeping in mind. Though I could absolutely see an ability-based power build with cooldown reduction being reasonable for him anyway. So that's not necessarily an issue because he's got good stuff going on with abilities. And then we have the ultimate Through the Realms. Heimdall charges forward, eggs ready. If Heimdall hits an enemy guard, he stuns them before unleashing a devastating swing of his axe, launching his target into the sky. A Bifrost portal appears and Heimdall sends the launched foe through the realms of Muspelheim and Niflheim before returning them back to the battleground at a random location in front of him. Muspelheim burns the enemy every 0.5 seconds for 1.5 seconds, while Niflheim slows the enemy for 2.5 seconds. This ability looks absolutely crazy in game. He just does like a baseball type of swing and knocks them into this portal up in the sky, and they just fly, and they crash through a fire landscape, an ice landscape, and then they come back down. So the hit damage is already quite a lot. It's up to 150 to 510 plus 110% of your physical power, which is, by the way, less than a basic attack, though. Keep that in mind. And then the Muspelheim damage is 25 to 65 plus 15% of your physical power, and that's the one that should be ticking for 0.5 every 0.5 seconds for 1.5 seconds. So that's actually times 3. So we're looking at roughly 195 damage plus 45% scaling, and then the wall hit damage happens. I'm not sure if that happens once or twice, because you're going through this wall, but I'm not sure if each of the walls count. Can't say. But that does another 35 to 195 damage plus 45% scaling. So definitely worth leveling as well when we're looking at all these damage numbers and how much they go up. And then you get the slow for 25%. And the enemy travels around for 4 seconds. So a massive amount of damage if you get hit by this, and you got to be pretty careful not to get close to him in many situations, unless you're really absolutely sure you can take him on. And the mana cost here is 70 to 90 with a 90-second cooldown. This also, because of how the portal comes down, allows you to set up your basic attack very well. You can use 2 swings before the enemy lands and then get your 150% scaling third swing right onto them afterwards, which of course is not that enjoyable in terms of damage you can take. And you can set up your sword as well and drop that down on them too. So yeah, there's a lot of fun you can have with this as long as there's no one else around. So ganking Heimdall on your own could be a problem. And getting ganked by Heimdall could be a problem too. And he overall, if you look at this kit, he's got a massive amount of vision tools through his passive alone, and then through the reveal of his 1, and then through the tripwire on his 3, so he can see you. And if you gank him, he's got a knockback to fight you back. His kit is relatively easy to set up. So like his 1, you can kind of throw that out in between. And he's got the ultimate to just keep you at a very far distance for a very long time, which is why I think like cooldown reduction could be a crazy build for him, just to spam that ultimate basically. And then he still has an escape, which is towards the weaker side depending, because it's easier to interrupt than others. I think it's very interesting, but I also think it overall makes him sound very strong, but also very fun, and that's the main point, honestly. I think this is a guard that is not gonna be that hard to balance. The 3 might be hard to balance, but the rest of the kit, you just turn down the damage numbers on the especially on the 2 here very easily, on the 1, on the 3, on the ult. So that shouldn't be an issue, and that should definitely give you ways to work with him. And I'm looking forward to that. I really like how you can like test various different approaches to him. You can do a classic hunter, crit hunter, CDR focused damage build. I think Transcendence would be staple on him anyways. And you can do a warrior bruiser type build, and it should all work somehow. And I think basically every role can work for him as well, except maybe, I mean we have seen Naja support, but I don't think his kit is that supporty. Well, it's not terrible for support either. So like I really like, I don't think he's that restricted in being played as a hunter in ADC. I can see a lot of flexible options. He got cleave as well, meaning he can do jungle, he can do solo to some degree at least. So very, very interesting, very exciting. That's the type of guard that I like, where you can just go all crazy and try all types of different things. And it all functions differently, kind of like how I do it with a Willish, where you can just go for very different builds as well. Good guard overall, I would say, from what I can see so far. The Nightwatch recolor, of course, the black and red theme here. And then we have all the other new skins. Again, I'm not going to go through these in detail here. I'm just going to show them really quick. We've got an Achilles skin from the Odyssey, a Mercury skin from the Odyssey, a Hades skin from the Cursed Pharaoh chest. Really cool skin though. Odyssey Sissy skin. And an Odyssey Jormungandr skin that's really cool. Unfortunate. The Aokwang skin, that's a really cool one. It turns him into a bat. It's in a deep and dark chest and not in the Odyssey. Along with that Hammerhead Vulcan though, the Shark Vulcan, pretty cool. Witchbane Izanami, actually in the Odyssey, really cool skin as well. That is really cool. Toxic Current Yemoja in the Toxic chest. Also really cool effects. Really cool first skin for her. Shadow Spectre Horus in the Shadow Spectre chest. Also a decently cool skin. Illuminated Chronos. Nice visual effects on that one, but not going to replace energy for me. Also in the Odyssey chest. Lost Soul King Arthur from the Lost Soul chest. Also pretty cool looking. Unfortunately, a lot of the cool skins from this patch are not the Odyssey ones, but rather ones I put in the chest. That's how it goes, I guess. But we're also getting Heimdall's Mastery skins. So all of these coming out throughout December here. And you can see that this is the schedule basically down to late January. The patch notes would then probably be somewhere on the 14th, maybe, I'm assuming. They might also be a bit earlier, but well, they could be at any point because the PTS might be longer for Season 7. So who knows? Okay, bug fixes. Conquest fixed an issue where Totem Coup would appear in its active state to some players, even though it's already captured and not attackable. That always irritated me. I was always confused about that, and I was just like, am I just stupid? And I'm very glad that's fixed, because that was always like, it's like, I'm attacking it, but no, okay, it's already taken. I didn't realize that. A Bull Demon King is fixed, so it scales as intended, and the health bar overlay was not showing for it. A Cursed Ankh upgrade. This now only triggers its additional damage debuff on enemies healing through abilities, not item heals, rallying heals, or mana heals. That was a Reddit user that dug into all the interaction of two Reddit users that I unfortunately don't remember the names of. They looked through all the interactions for Cursed Ankh, and there was a lot of weird stuff going on there. That's fixed. And Odyssey quest that required players to play one game of adventure now works with domination. Guard fixes. Fix an issue where Horus would not be able to use his follow-up ranged attack on his ability if he was CC'd at a certain time. That was really annoying, so that's nice, it's fixed. Updated card art for you-know-who. Izanami had some fixes to a fadeaway because it had the wrong hint in terms of direction where she was going, and her HP bar sometimes showed. Persephone fixed an issue where her passive meter would skip numbers sometimes. So fixed an issue where certain skins would crash the game. These skins are really nailed. Set fixed an issue where Rise of the Spawn achievement could not be earned. Scotty fixed an issue where Kalda could fall through the floor if he was killed on certain types of CC. Nice. And fixed an issue where Kalda wouldn't jump with Scotty. They will jump together again. Sylvanas Verdant Growth, this ability can now be fired over walls as it was intended last update. Yemoja fixed an issue where basic attacks were not hitting enemy deployables in some cases. Fixed an issue where her ultimate ability could move towers. Oh, that's already fixed. I was told about that recently. Zeus fixed an issue where the Detonate achievement could not be earned. And Jonkui fixed an issue where his ability 3 was not working. This card will be re-enabled when the Vigilant update releases. Project Olympus updates. Full mouse and keyboard support for console. That's working now. You have to manually set it once and then it'll be set up for you. That's it. So yeah, have fun with that if you want to play that way. It doesn't work on Nintendo Switch. And crossplay changes. Matchmaking is now based on control scheme, not platform. So hang on a second. It said removed the general crossplay option. Matchmaking is keyboard only or mouse only in arena. Oh, okay. All right. Okay, this is actually worth talking about. So matchmaking is keyboard mouse only or gamepad only in arena, joust, conquest in NA and EU, and ranked modes in all regions. That means your player pool is effectively smaller now because you're now either going to play with keyboard and mouse or with gamepad, which especially for PC players means they have less players to play with, because I think the vast majority of SMITE players is on console now. Good call to only do that in EU and NA, because we don't have enough players for that. So all other modes, regions will match keyboard and mouse and gamepad together. Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging our existence for once. Crossplay parties are allowed in all modes except ranked. And those parties will be matched based on the majority control scheme, with ties being matched against keyboard and mouse players. So if you have like two friends playing with controller and then one plays keyboard and mouse, he plays with you on the controller side. Interesting. That might be abused, but oh well. You will not be able to use keyboard and mouse while Xbox only or PS4 only mode is enabled. Okay, makes sense because that's controller. These options will force the use of gamepads. These options will also only be allowed in normal modes and not in ranked. Makes sense for the player pool. I don't know if it's controller only in most regions now, then I don't see any reason why you would play Xbox only, PS4 only. I know, some people say that one region is better than the other, but then you're also playing against easier enemies, so I think it evens out, and matchmaking should have evened out by now anyways for the most part. Fixed an issue with Xbox only and PS4 only modes matching you against players of other platforms. It should be noted that very few players use this option, and it will hurt your chances of getting matches to have it enabled. Really, I wouldn't recommend it. It doesn't make any sense just from the perspective of how much you lower the player pool. Game modes. Returning adventure, Heimdall's Crossing. Fafnir's Wonderland is back, but where's Fafnir? The Bifrost has been opened and Heimdall is taking over the show. Fight until you fall against waves of increasingly difficult PvE encounters, relive the zany enemy of Yuletide past, and discover new challenges. Do you have what it takes to survive Heimdall's Crossing? New quest, play a game of Heimdall's Crossing and earn the ferocious hen avatar from the original event. Play it. It's fantastic. I'm gonna play it again. It's like still one of my favorite PvE modes that the game had, along with Chinkyan's Mount. I think those more basic modes were so much fun. So absolutely recommend. Item balance, 1 item. Jade Emperor's Crown, decreased physical power aura, or reduction aura rather, from 30 to 20. This is because of solo lane primarily, because of Yemoja and solo lane, where it just worked very well for him, making it very hard to gank him, and yeah, that's fixed, so to speak. The problem is that whenever you have these changes, it kind of puts this item against sovereignty, and then depending on how it goes, one's better, one's worse, blah, blah, blah. It just happened to work very synergistic with Yemoja, and therefore this nerf. So it isn't even directly a targeted support in this case, and it's like kind of so. I think it's a bit unfortunate, but at the same time, I can see why. So yeah. Guard balance. This one's crazy. This is interesting, by the way. This is an Olympian change. And the next one, this one is an Olympian change as well. So Camelot wasn't doing too hot. Wasn't performing that well. I think he was underrated, to be honest, because he's got the power. He's got like the scaling and everything. You just have to build in a direction that works with that. I think he's not that much of a solo at the moment. But that's just me. Anyways, his passive buff is increased from 6% to 8% physical lifesteal and increased healing with a essence drinker. And vampire bats buff, the vampirism is increased from 3 to 4%. So you get a lot more self-sustain going on here. But that's not the most important part. Devour increased range from 30 to 45 units. If you remember how this ability started out, it was like a slow wind up kind of thing, and then it's just a mini leap, and it's like, oh, okay, great. And now it's pretty much instant. Like it's super easy immunity frame, and it's gonna leap further now, so it's probably gonna be a longer immunity frame as well along with that, or a very fast leap. I doubt that though. And it still has, actually relatively good base stats and sustain. An aggressive playstyle focusing on this overmaxing the 1 should be a lot more effective in many situations now, and I think that's going to be very interesting. So I think Camelot is in a very interesting place right now, and I could see him being played a lot. We'll find out if that turns out to be true. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but if people catch on to this, I feel like this could be, even if it takes a while, it could be a very interesting new playstyle, especially depending on how the next season changes things. So yeah, watch out for Camelot. Yemoja increased damage taken from 10% to 15% when his debuff is active. So that's his passive when he's getting hit by CC that he immunes. Absolutely fair. I think that was always a bit not punishing enough. So I think this is a good change. And yep, I like it, and good move. And that's all I have to say. Also very good move. inspired by the Olympians. Okay, I don't know why they needed the Olympians to have them tell that one, but Kukulkan got his nerfs, and I'm very glad that how he got nerfed. I think that they should have noticed themselves, but hey. Whirlwind, partial revert on the Whirlwind application time, increased the refresh application time from 0.25 seconds to 0.35 seconds. Not as quick as, not as slow as before, but a little bit slower again. Middle ground, good choice. And then partial revert on the Whirlwind damage, decreased damage per tick from 10 to 50 to 9 to 45. Now, I've wanted to look this up. I actually forgot that. Unfortunate. But from what I can tell, I think it has 8 ticks. So it would still be like 40 damage. So it would still be like a little bit more. I wanted to look that up. But it should still be an overall more effective damage output because he... I'm going to try and look it up right now. But it should be more effective damage output because he still has Spear of the Magus. And with Spear of the Magus, like you get an extra tick with fully stacked Spear of the Magus or with a higher stack amount on Spear of the Magus. And that will overall increase your damage. So it should still be more effective in many situations. But I'm actually going to look at Kukulkan on my phone right now because I really want to see that. I'm going to get back to the... Oh, no, we're already there. Just got to scroll down a bit. Because I really don't know that part. Are we going to scroll down to the other changes first? Maybe while this loads a little bit. Unless we can get it right here. No, we can get it right here. Okay, no, it's a maximum of 12 ticks. But that's assuming they stay in there. So in that case, it would be a damage loss. Now the question is how many ticks minimum? I think it's 8. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to say here. Well, no, here. Doing 0.5 seconds. No, okay. Actually, it's fine. So the minimum ticks would be 5 ticks. And like 6 ticks rather, because there's an instant tick, I think. So in that case, it would still not be a damage loss. So the damage loss will be bigger the longer the enemy stays in your tornado. Which I guess is fair. If the enemy gets locked down in the tornado, they would just get punished a little bit less. It doesn't hit quite as hard as an ultimate, basically. And if they get out early, then they don't take that much less. Yep, I'm fine with that. I think it's a good adjustment, even though I still think decreasing the ticks wouldn't necessarily be terrible just to make Spear of the Magus a little less effective, but that's another story. Bullrun, base stats, decreased base power from 40 to 38, because he works a little bit differently. Bullrun has unique power scaling on basic attacks or mages, so he highly benefits from base power. So that's a bit adjusted, and yeah, Bullrun just goes back and forth a little bit, but I think that's fine. I think he's finding his place. The next one, disappointment. That was supposed to be our assassin. That was supposed to be our jungler. He's now a ADC solo lane, mid lane, whatever hybrid. So yeah, his cooldown on Skewer has increased from 7 to 8 seconds. I just wish Set was able to become. I just wish we actually got a jungle assassin. Oh man, maybe next card. Yemoja. Yemoja gets a lot of changes because she performed not that well initially. She performed below average, below the point of balance. I know some people were trying to argue with me that if you combo the 1 into the 1 into the 1 on level 1, then you actually get a lot of damage, and that is correct. But it's just not enough to make her viables throughout the entire game. It's too many other things that she doesn't do well enough, and too much like she has to focus on just leveling her 1, for example, to even be able to have any impact. When really what you want to level as a support style character would be more the 2. And yeah, Omi can kind of like make or break her very, very easily. Like depending on how often you can spam an ability, it can be very effective or less effective, which is a general problem with her, of course. But I don't think she was super strong as some people claimed she was. I think she was just not performing that well, and the stats reflect that. And I think she can definitely do more on a higher level of play and a competitive level of play with coordination, with strategies around that. But I still think that buffs are absolutely justifiable. And one thing that a lot of people were complaining about was her forced build path due to the bonus Omi through having to stack mana MP5. And that is something that Hi-Rez wants to change here. And that's what we're going to see. First of all, she's now banned from the infinite mana match of the day modes, along with King Arthur, because they're kind of broken in that, because they can just spam everything over and over. And her Omi objective will no longer be the 300, 450, 600 mana and MP5, and instead she gets one bonus Omi by reaching level 4. She gets a second bonus Omi by reaching level 12, so relatively early in the game, and then she gets a third bonus Omi by reaching 300 mana or MP5 from items, which is a lot more manageable for sure. And honestly, you can maybe even get away without it, depending on what you want to do in the game. But then again, you also want CDR, and many CDR items have mana anyway, so it should be fine. Bouncing Bubble and Moonstrike both get a buff as well. Bouncing Bubble increased the radius from 12 to 14, and Moonstrike from 10 to 12. And in Moonstrike's case, that is the minimum radius, meaning the radius when the enemy is further away, while the closer you get, the more the same it stays, basically. Which should make this ability significantly easier to hit, and I think they needed that because they were both relatively easy to avoid beforehand, and that should not be the case as much anymore. And I think that's reasonable. Even though, of course, it affects her skill floor and her skill ceiling, I guess. I think it's okay that when your character so heavily relies on these abilities to have an impact, that they are not like such a gamble in some situations. And Mending Waters increased healing from 20 to 100 to 30 to 130. Quite a bit of an increase there, quite impactful, I think, especially if you use it multiple times in a row. So that's going to be interesting as well. And that is it for these patch notes. I hope this was interesting and insightful. If you're new to the channel, please hit the sub button and maybe the bell, and you'll see me check out Heimdall in game a little bit, hopefully, once BTS goes up. See you later. DukeSloth out.